Hey, welcome to my short presentation on flexible eating, macro tracking, or flexible dieting. Any of those names, it all means the same thing. It's about tracking your macros so that you eat sensibly. So let's get cracking and let's get into it. So, flexible dieting is supposed to fit around your lifestyle and the food that you like to eat. That's why it's flexible. And that in itself makes it less stressful, less guilt because you can have a few things that you want to eat. All you have to do is track your macros. So, your macros are your macronutrients. Your macronutrients are your protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So you track the amount of macros that your body needs, and if the food fits, you eat it. Simple as that. So you put your macros into something like MyFitnessPal, so that's the one that I'm going to demonstrate to use. Put your macros in there, and then if the food fits and you've got enough macros to have the food that you want, that's it. It's yours. So there's a lot less guilt than it would be in any other eating plan or eating program. So it is flexible eating, and it is something that I have been able to do for a long period of time, and that's something that I think that works quite well. It's one of the ways in which I've been able to maintain my weight, and it works. So I'm going to demonstrate how to use MyFitnessPal. So what you need to do is to download it onto your phone. So whether you download it from the Play Store or whether you download it from the App Store, download MyFitnessPal onto your phone and create an account. You now need to establish your macros. So using the link below, click on to the macro calculator. Enter the recommended calorie intake from your most recent in-body measurements. Now you have this information, you can enter this into MyFitnessPal. So open MyFitnessPal, go to More, then to Goals, Calorie, Carb, Protein and Fat Goals, and enter in your calories, along with making sure your carbohydrate is at 30%, your protein is at 40%, and your fat is at 30%. Few hints and tips for you before we go on to have a look how to track your food. It is really important that you track everything before you eat it. There is no point in waking up and starting to track your macros and then getting to the end of the day and realizing that you have 20 grams of protein left over or 30 grams of carbohydrate, etc. So it's always best to track everything before you eat it. Before the day begins, make sure you've got all of your food tracked into MyFitnessPal, and when you wake up in the morning, you know exactly what you're going to have. It's really good to try and include fat, carb and protein in every meal. But if you're working out and you're working out really hard, I would try wrapping most of your carbs around your food times. So before and after your training. We'll look at that in just a second. Now, the database within MyFitnessPal contains 11 million foods, and those foods have been put in by the general public. So some people have put them in correctly and some people have put them in incorrectly. You'll find foods in there that don't contain any macros. So an individual has inputted the calorific value but hasn't put in the macronutrient value. So when you add that in, if you don't know and you don't realise, it looks like you've got more to eat than you have. So it's really important, if you can use the scanner and scan the food yourself, you're going to get a more accurate reading. Make sure when you're choosing food from the database that you choose raw or cooked food. Obviously rice is going to make a big difference in raw or cooked, as is meat. So make sure that you weigh it and you enter it correctly. And it's really important that you eat all your macros. There is little point in saving anything. Eat your macros. I would suggest that you eat minus or plus 5 grams of your protein and carbohydrate and minus or plus 2 grams of your fat. The other thing that which you can begin to do is to try and guess the food before you enter it into MyFitnessPal. This way you're actually going to start to educate yourself and you're going to begin to understand the nutritional value of what you're eating and how many grams of carbohydrates, protein or fat it has in it. Let's begin to track some food. So open up MyFitnessPal and press the add sign. Select food and then select a meal. If you've used a food before, then it gives you the history of your most recent foods. So you can select a food and then it brings up also recent pairings that you've had with that food. So click the food and then change the grammage to display the correct amount. To use the barcode feature, press the barcode button on the right hand side. This will open the camera. Position the camera over the barcode of the food and this will bring up the product. Add in the correct amount of grams and press the tick. There are shortcuts in the program so you can add in yesterday's lunch just by swiping right. So add yesterday's snacks, swipe right and add. By clicking the top section where it says nutrients remaining, it will show you the total you have left under each category for today. So protein, carbohydrates and fats is what you're looking for, and it will show you the remaining grams that you have left of each of those. Another great feature is to click on the edit on the top left hand side, and once you press that it opens up some tick boxes on the left. You can select all of the products and then add them onto the same meal tomorrow. Alternatively, you could just add your lunch or your dinner or your snacks and then just add them in to the next day. Alcohol needs to be tracked differently because alcohol is neither a carb or a fat. So we know the calorific value, but we need to divide it into 4 and track it as a carb, or divide it into 9 and track it as a fat. So for example, a 25 milliliter single shot of vodka is 55 calories, but we're not counting calories, so we need to convert it into macronutrients. So if you track it as a carb, it is 14 grams. If you track it as fat, it is 6 grams. Let's take a look at the wine. A small glass of wine, 170 millilitres of wine. If you track it as a carb, 43.75 grams of carbs or 19 grams of fat. That's a hell of a lot, okay? Because there are 3 times more macros in wine than there is in vodka. So there you go, it's vodka. It's not necessarily vodka, gin. So vodka is an example of a spirit. So any of the spirits are going to be about the same grams. So 14 grams of carbs or 6 grams of fat. And there's your wine, red, white or rosé. So there you have it, macro tracking or flexible dieting. I hope you found that useful, and please see the next lesson on how to create recipes yourself.